Hi and welcome. My name is Tolan and I'm the co-founder of Productivity Meet. In this video, we're going to look at a series of 14 keyboard shortcuts, which will allow you to more effectively make a special selection within Microsoft Excel. We'll discuss things like launching the Go-To dialog box with Ctrl-G. We'll look at selecting comments or cells with comments with Ctrl-Shift-O, as well as things like the keyboard shortcut for selecting row differences, column differences, direct precedence, direct dependence, as well as only the visible cells in your worksheet. So if you're interested in these 14 keyboard shortcuts or learning more about them, join us in this video. Now, if you want to follow along, go ahead and go to the description section of this video, in which you'll find a link to download the exercise file, that of Apple Income Statement 2015. Now, in this video, we've added a couple of new tabs, which we'll discuss later in this video, but we want to bring and highlight the idea of row differences and precedence and dependence, which we'll cover in this actual video. All right, so first, if you wanted to launch the Go-To dialog box, you could do that by coming up here and going to Find and Select, and then say Go-To. However, I much prefer to use the keyboard shortcut of Ctrl-G. Ctrl-G will bring up that Go-To dialog box, and you can say go to a specific cell, like I would like to go to cell Z49. That would therefore go to cell Z49. You can see Z49 is currently our active cell. You can also use the keyboard shortcut Ctrl-G to launch the Go-To dialog box, and then go to Special and select, say, all the blank cells in your document, which is kind of useful. Now, let's say that we had some comments in the document or in the Excel file, and we would go to Review and then say Insert a Comment, and this could say data clearly data taken as of, let's see, maybe the date was 10/10/2015 from Google Finance. Maybe we'll have another comment here, and we'll just create a comment where we want to say double check. All right, that was probably the worst typing ever. But if you wanted to find the cells with comments, you could press Ctrl-G, launch the Go-To dialog box, go to Special, and then go to this first selection of cells with comments. You hit OK. It would select these two cells, that of A3 and A11. Now, you can use the specific keyboard shortcut of Ctrl-Shift-O. Ctrl-Shift-O will find the cells with comments. So that can be kind of useful. Then you could say delete the comments from those cells. So hit Ctrl-Z to undo. But Ctrl-Shift-O is a cool keyboard shortcut when you're dealing with comments. Now, if you want to show the region around your active cell, you can press Ctrl-Shift-8. That's somewhat useful, similar to Ctrl-A for being in a specific region. Then if you want to select that current region, you can hit Ctrl-A. That too would work. Now, let's say that we want to find the difference between individual rows. I'm going to go to this third worksheet that called row differences. And if you want to find the differences between individual rows, you can kind of select the two rows that you want to find the difference in. And then we would use the keyboard shortcut of Control backslash. Control backslash will basically tell us, okay, in this specific row, which are the individual items that are different. So we notice that 1,000 is in 1,000 in our book inventory, is 1,000 in our stock. 1984, we actually have 1983. Here we have 1452, 1452, and here we have 10 more. So if you want to find the difference between this row, the items in this row, you would press Control backslash, and it would highlight those two items. And you can do the same with columns. So look at these individual column values and tell me which values are different. So this is 1,000, this is 1,000, this is 1984, this is 1983. So rather than press Control backslash, we'll press Control Shift backslash, and it would find those values. So again, you could press Control G and go to, I believe you can find the row difference here, or you can use the keyboard shortcut of selecting those and then Control backslash. If you want to find the column differences, you could select those, press Control G, go to Special, and then Column Differences. Or you can make that selection and then press Control Shift backslash. So for those of you that use row and column differences, these are two really useful keyboard shortcuts. Now, when we think about precedents and dependents, precedents are essentially all the values that contribute to this value. So if we were to say show the calculation for this value here in the year-end total is the sum of these four values. Now these values are calculated by the product of this quantity sold times the price. So the direct precedents are all of the values that individually contribute to here. So again, it would be these four values. If we want to trace those, we could go ahead and use the keyboard shortcut of Control left bracket. Control left bracket would show all the precedents, all the values that all the direct precedents, essentially everything that contributes to that. If we want to show all the precedents, we would go ahead and press Control Shift bracket, and would show everything that turns into the calculation for this final value. So again, it's the quantity sold. The price is determined by this cell here. So all of these cells influence this. Meaning if we were to change any one of these cells, let's change it to 350, this value will change. If we were to change this to say 15 or maybe 150, I guess wasn't a great example. I'll change it to 15. This value would change. So that's essentially how you would find precedents or direct precedents. Again, it would be Control bracket to find direct precedents, or Control Shift bracket, Control Shift left bracket to find all precedents. Now let's say that we had another value, which was something like, so that was our revenue. Let's say that we had a net margin of maybe 30%, or let's, I guess, make this simple. Let's just say this is cost of goods sold and this is gross margin. So essentially, let's say that we have a cost of goods sold of 35%. So mathematically, it's not super important, but we'll just do it this way. We'll say is equal to this value times a gross margin of 35%, and then this is equal to this value minus this value. So our gross margin is that, and then let's say that our other costs are 10,000. And then our profit is equal to this minus this, right? So anyway, we have this little revenue calculation. If we want to find all the dependents, all the direct dependents, all the specific values that are directly dependent on this, we would press the keyboard shortcut Control right bracket and would say, well, this cell is directly dependent. But what are all the cells that are dependent? If you want to find all dependents, you would press Control Shift right bracket, and it would show all of those individual values. So That's how you find direct and indirect dependence. Now, let's say that we had some columns hidden. So maybe we had this column hidden here. We could hide this column by Ctrl 0. If we wanted to select all of our columns or all of our cells, we would do that, but with Ctrl A, and let's change it to yellow text. It's kind of bad to read. Red. So that when we unhide this column, that was also selected. So now let's select only the visible cells. We could do this with Alt semicolon. Alt semicolon would select all visible cells, not including that of column D, so that when we change the text and then release column D, that hidden column had not made changes. So again, if you want to select only your visible cells, you would press Control Alt semicolon. So that can be pretty useful. Now, if you wanted to say select items, let's make this a table, right? So let's go ahead here and hit Control T to insert a table. So we have these individual, we'll just make it black. We have these individual values. If we wanted to select an entire row of a table, we would press Shift Spacebar. And if you wanted to select that entire row in the worksheet, you would press Shift Spacebar again. If you want to select an entire column, you would press Control Spacebar, would select that entire column for the row. Control Spacebar would again then select those individual items for the actual worksheet. If you wanted to select everything in all the data in your table, you would press Control A. Control A second time would select these labels, and then Control A third time would select the entire worksheet. And that's slightly different than having a range. Control A would select both the labels and the data, and then Control A second time would select the worksheet. So working in a table, it's slightly different. Shift Spacebar will select the row of that table, and pressing a second time will select that entire row. Whereas if you're in just a basic range, Shift Spacebar will select that entire row. The same is true for column, or the comparable is true for column. Control Spacebar will select that just for the table. Control Spacebar will select that entire row, or that entire column for the worksheet. So those are the 14 keyboard shortcuts that we looked at for making a selection or a special selection within Microsoft Excel. Again, we'd love to have your feedback. You can post any thoughts, ideas, things that you love about Microsoft Excel or about this set of keyboard tips and tricks shortcuts in the comment section of this video. You can also think about giving us a thumbs up or thumbs down. That would be super helpful to indicate how well we're doing or how we could perhaps improve. We really want to make these videos as useful, as pragmatic, as interesting, and perhaps even fun as possible. So if you want to join us in another section, we'll go ahead and start to cover keyboard shortcuts for entering data in Microsoft Excel. We'll look at things like Shift Enter, which will allow you to enter data and move up. We'll look at cool things like completing entries and staying in the current cell with Control Enter, or entering the same data in multiple cells simultaneously with Control Enter. We'll look at filling a formula from above with Control D, or filling a formula from the left with Control R, as well as adding a hyperlink with things like Control K. So we'll look at 14 keyboard shortcuts for entering data within Microsoft Excel. Join us in the next video, and we'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.